And now I'm going to call him to the front of the class. Please have your homework. Pop quiz. It's Javi Reyes, host of Locked On Padres. Yes, my schedule is going to be so bananas the next few weeks that this free period I have now at school is like, maybe if I squeeze in a podcast now, I won't have to worry about a podcast down the line. That's sometimes happens here. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. And meanwhile, in my neck of the woods, I'm just free all the time now. You know what I mean? I'm just looking for work and whatnot. And now I'm like, you know what? Let's do some podcasting. Why not for me? The early afternoon, And honestly, to be honest with you, Sully, I love the school background. I love the school background. I think it's a great touch. And I've got the books and everything, so it's a little bit of a connection, just a tiny bit. So I'm excited. I'm, of course, always excited to talk Padres and have you take me to school, apparently, which you said in the opening, which I'm excited for.
Locked on learning today. We're doing with between the readings and the classroom. Okay, pencils down, and turn your books to page 2023 because we're talking about the Padres. We're talking about the big budgeted, deep pocketed. It's so terrible that these big market teams like the Padres just eat up all the big players. How can the Cubs and Red Sox possibly contend? I know I've said that before. Mm-hmm. And my favorite thing is one of my listeners didn't get my joke when I said that. And they said, well, actually, Chicago and Boston are much bigger markets than San Diego. And I said, really? Really? Show your work.
They're so close to getting the point. They're right there. They're right there.
Just take the last little leap. Come on, Indiana Jones this. Take a step and you'll see the invisible bridge. Oh, Javi, what an off season for the Padres, who came within 3 wins of the World Series last year. And look, I'll just say that the main narrative that a lot of us thought was going to happen this year was, would the inevitable Manny Machado opt-out hang over the team like a dark cloud? And we didn't even get to March before that was answered.
No, we didn't even get to the World Baseball Classic before that was answered. I mean, sheesh. I mean, it's great. And Peter Seidler deserves a lot of credit. AJ Preller deserves a lot of credit because one really important note about the Padres is also like, they haven't even been to, this came a week after, or at least I think a week after. Like you saw what happened with the Brewers and Corbin Burns, a team that I have slandered plenty on my podcast. Mm-hmm. It's just one of the things I do. And that team was going to an arbitration meeting over $800K, which obviously is a lot of money. But in the grand context of things, really not, especially for probably the best overall player on your team. Well, the Padres haven't really been in an arbitration meeting since like early days of the AJ Preller era, and honestly probably even before that. They've really established a culture, not of just like trying, but of being like, look, we're going to try and do well by our players. Obviously, I imagine some guys in the future, they're going to trade, right? They traded Luke Voit, right? But they, for the most part, they're not this team that's nickel and diming players. Like Peter Seidler said I think it was on Friday, when a lot of the stories about Manny were coming out, he was like, he's my top priority. And then 2 days later, they get the contract extended. So I think that while there's been a lot of silly discourse about where are the Padres getting this money from, my explanation for that is that people are very rich out here and people have a lot of money, especially in today's economy. And as things go and transpire, I think that there's plenty of money to go around. And the second is, yes, the Padres, I think they were ranked like the 27th biggest market, but I think it's important to note that number one, San Diego weather is great. I've never been there personally, but it's great. Great baseball weather. Number two, basically even Dodgers fans, shout out Molly Knight, who used to work for the Athletic, who does her Dodgers stuff. Even she was like, this is so much better of a ballpark than the Dodgers. Everybody says Petco is one of the best ballparks in the entire country. It's amazing. That's what I've heard. Yeah. You've got great food, everything. And then number three, which is perhaps the point that gets talked about the least, they lost an NFL team. That's a really important thing to be like, you know what? Yeah, the Chargers never did up. Nobody get mad at me for saying the Chargers. I know the Padres fans get mad at me. But, they didn't have like this giant, oh my gosh, they travel. This is the Eagles and Steelers. They didn't have that, but they certainly had a core. And people were like, yeah, let's go to football games, even if we aren't much of a football town. And then you lost that. So on top of all of that, they're just like, what do we root for? The college team, the Aztecs.
I
Like,
will, I will, I will say on the line. I know a lot of people from San Diego living
mm,
here in Southern California. They were Charger crazy. That was
mm,
a Charger first city. They
mm-hmm,
loved their Chargers. And there's a bit of an inferiority complex that San Diegans have regarding Los Angeles. They lost their NBA team to Los Angeles. They had the Clippers. And then
mm-hmm,
now they've lost their football team. And so the Padres are the only game in town. And first of all, where do they find the money? What are you, their accountant? What do you care?
mm-hmm.
They're doing what an owner's supposed to do. Saying, I've got a big Scrooge McDuck pile of money,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to spend it on something fun and hopefully give this city, which hasn't had a title of any kind in my lifetime, to have that moment for the fans. And so, like, I wonder if they'll be able to sustain this. They probably won't. But do you know what? If this spending comes about, and I'll get in second segment. I want to bring up the Brewers too, because you made a great point there, and I don't want to lose it. But I want to make this point: the owner's job is to say, "I've got lots of money. This is my plaything, and I want to have." He's has a fantasy baseball team where I want Soto, I want Bogaerts, I want Machado, and I want you, Darvish. And now he's saying, "Hey, the Padres have never won the World Series. The Padres have one World Series game that they've won in their entire history. So this should be, it's a baseball only city. I'm going to push all my chips to the center table, if for no other reason than to give Padre fans at least one title that will be the greatest moment in the history of San Diego sports."
100%.
And so, yeah, maybe that's why they're spending the money instead of going, "Oh, wait a second, but Manny Machado asked he wanted access to the soda machine, and we need to see, carry the one." No! He wants to give San Diego the great, it wouldn't even be a debate. Okay, let's list. If they won the World Series, they talk, what's the greatest moment in San Diego sports fan history? There wouldn't be a debate.
There are, honestly, these past few years, just their signings and just the things they've done are already in probably like the top 6 or 7, right? Like the Tatis's almost MVP year is practically probably already there, right? Like there's so many things already, and then for you to have this as the cherry on top, or not even a cherry, just the giant sundae on top of the sundae, would be fantastic. And I think, yeah, it's very this need by regular people, not even like reporters and news outlets, but regular people who are like, where are they getting their money from? Like, why do you care? You're not a journalist. You know what I mean? And also, who cares? Come on, guys. Even rich people don't go broke the same way. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they don't even, it doesn't even happen the same way with that. There'll be some PPP loan that Tom Brady will get or something like that, right? So that's how I do it.
It's a lot of people carrying water for the owners, but you've taken the Padres, who were an afterthought for a generation, not appearing in the playoffs at all between losing the 2006 Division Series and the COVID year.
Yeah.
That's a decade and a half where there was not a single game being played in October. They were such long shots to be even considered for a pennant run, and now you'd have to consider them to be one of their favorites if you're going to make any bets. And Javi Reyes, if you're making bets, where should you go?
You know where you should go, man? Look, it's a place that we've talked about a decent amount lately. You know, people might be familiar with previous sponsors and whatnot, but guess what? You can go to FanDuel. Oh, yeah, that's right. You've probably heard of FanDuel before. And while, you know, the regular baseball season isn't currently going on just yet, the midway point of the NBA season, that's right. I know there's a lot of drama about players playing and not playing, whatever. Guess what, though? You can make your bets at FanDuel.com, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, it's secure, and it's super easy to use, even for an idiot like me that literally never, or at least rarely, does any sports gambling, sports betting of any kind. You guys go check that out. There's a lot of weird discourse going on right now. Is Joel Embiid going to sneak up and get the MVP because there's a anti-Jokic campaign going on? Maybe the Celtics do super great in the second half. Maybe Jason Tatum. I know you were a Boston guy once upon a time, Sully, so maybe that'll be the case. Hopefully, for the sake of my sanity, it won't be. But we'll see, guys. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 and bonus bets when you go. It's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Chef's kiss. Hey, you brought up the Milwaukee Brewers.
Mm-hmm.
The Brewers and the Padres are a very interesting comparison in that they are relatively smaller markets that are very close to a gigantic market.
Mm-hmm.
And while there has been a Milwaukee World Series champion, that was the Braves back in 1957. This Brewers team has been around since 1970 when the Pilots moved to Milwaukee and became the Brewers. The Milwaukee Brewers franchise has yet to win a World Series. And they put together a team that between 2017 and this year have been competitive. Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought the team in 2021, which had Burns and a Woodruff and a very good rotation, I thought they were going to be this team that was going to be the surprise team in the NL, not Atlanta. Obviously, they got to Game 7 of the National League Championship Series in 2018. And they got to the National Championship Series in 2011. They've had a good run for a bunch of years here. But they've had some quality players, had some playoff runs. And lest we forget, they finished one game behind the Philadelphia Phillies last year for the wild card spot. We saw what happened with the Phillies. I didn't mean to bring that up to you. But the fact of the matter is that it is an apt comparison of San Diego and Milwaukee, that those two markets, and you have one fan base or one ownership that is nickel and diming their Cy Young winner and possibly creating a culture of tension in the team, having that sort of antagonism with the ownership. And then you have San Diego, which is doing the opposite. Okay, I despite rumors, I've never been a major league player, but I would imagine the culture of an ownership that drags people to arbitration. The more we learn about arbitration, what a god awful system that is, where it's an antagonistic relationship. If you have an ownership that is saying, not only are we going to try to bring top players in, like Darvish, like Bogaerts, like Soto, like Machado, but we're going to try to avoid that antagonism. That must make the culture, along with playing one of the most beautiful cities in the country, that must make the culture of San Diego attractive for a free agent. Like, I don't know, let's take one at random. Xander Bogaerts looking around saying, where should I go? Should I go for the team that was saying, oh, we're making so much money, but we want to save a little money, so let's dump Mookie Betts in a salary dump? Or San Diego say, hey, we're going to avoid arbitration. You're worth it. We're not even going to drag it out negotiations over the year like with Manny Machado. We want to end that cloud. And you got to think that this year, whether they win it or not, at least it's going to be a pleasant place to be a millionaire.
Absolutely. And I think that it's really important to note, number one, that yes, I always love and appreciate people bring up the Mookie Betts thing, because I actually literally know some Red Sox fans that got tricked. And that's the way I've kind of viewed it, is baseball, unlike, say, the NBA and maybe the NFL, there are sometimes owners that come in and they go way too aggressive, but those leagues are structured differently, and then sometimes it bites them in the butt. Mark Cuban when he first did the Mavericks, Vivek Ranadive for the Kings, all sorts of teams, maybe the Phoenix Suns, we'll see. But yes, sometimes in those sports, you don't want to push all your chips. But in baseball, which sees things like Corbin Burns happen, see things like Mookie Betts, where then they raise the ticket prices the next year, which is absolutely asinine and one of the more forgotten things about that trade. Yes, it's totally possible that in 3 years, the Padres roster were like, what the heck happened here? Oh my gosh, it's Tatis versus the world, and everyone else is aged. It's totally possible, but in baseball, it's just so different, because there are so many teams that have, or at least tried to convince their fans that, you just mentioned that the Brewers were one game out of the wild card. They were in the NLCS, or they were about to be in the NLCS, whatever it is. And that was actually when the infamous Trent Grisham era occurred, who's now on the Padres, which is kind of poetic, I guess. That this is the only sport where teams get that far and then they continually reset. And instead of being this is the only sport. This is the only sport where the Tampa Bay Rays are in the World Series and are somehow not rumored for any top free agent. the following offseason. That's weird. In the NBA, could you imagine if like there was the Bucks? Like that would basically, for NBA fans, that would basically be like the Bucks then tried to trade away Chris Middleton instead of what they ended up doing, which is going and getting a star point guard like Drew Holiday. I know you're not necessarily the biggest NBA fan,
I do recognize some names. I'm not,
Yeah,
I'm
you
not
recognize
that
some names.
oblivious to the NBA.
That's basically the equivalent, and that sport is like a harder salary cap and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, baseball, it's just, I'm not saying that every team has to spend like the Padres to that level where you're going to be putting out such a salary. You're not like the Yankees or Steve Cohen Mets. But the idea that the Baltimore Orioles can sit there with a $25 million payroll and they go out and sign Adam Frazier, that's just not good for the sport, that there's not more competition for these guys. I refuse to accept that there's all these things. You got the Oakland A's that look like, it looks like a Little League ballpark sometimes, the way that place looks, right? And the owner's one of the richest in the entire sport. So it's just an unfortunate kind of occurrence.
The most egregious one, I think, is Cleveland, which is one of the worst payrolls in baseball. They're a 90-win team. They have the biggest World Series drought, and they have an outstanding pitching staff. I can't stress this enough. If they move their payroll to the middle, this would be a team that everyone would be saying is going to be a legit World Series contender. There's always been carrying water for the owners, and I think the press is a big part of it that tries to create an antagonistic relationship towards the players. I've just been reading yet another book about Kurt Flood in the early days of free agency, that it's always been those greedy players, because you can quantify a player's worth based on their hits or their batting average or whatever it is, whatever stat you're using. But it's hard to quantify the people up in the front office. And so when they say, "Oh, we're going to lose," they've been saying from the beginning, "Oh, we're going to lose so much money, we're going to go bankrupt." No, you made more money. You expanded. Yeah. And yet the narrative it's always easier to put the narrative of, "Oh, those greedy players. I would do it. I would give my right arm to be a baseball player, and you're being paid for a children's game, blah, 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 blah." Not thinking about, wait a minute, there's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they're saying we want to be paid as such. And people are going on saying like the Padres, what they're doing is irresponsible, or the Mets are doing is irresponsible. I think what the Cleveland Guardians are doing that's irresponsible. What Baltimore is doing is irresponsible, and that is they're not putting the best product on the field to be a piece of entertainment. When you saw, like, I wasn't the biggest fan of the new Avatar film, or it was Wakanda Forever and all these, or Top Gun. But if you saw, like, I love we're not gonna spend as much money. We're gonna have a little toy plane instead of doing Top Gun, or it's just gonna be a couple people wearing blue makeup swimming around in a pond, instead of the big freaking whale jumping up in Avatar 2. Sorry, this is welcome to Locked On Avatar 2.
Right.
But they spend the money. And you don't hear people saying, "Oh, God, I hope 20th Century Fox didn't lose all their money on that, because, they should have saved some money. They should have cut corners." In fact, against a Navi above replacement, we got a much cheaper Navi if we just had if we just put a rubber mask over it. I just made that up. Yeah, but, it's because, let's get down to brass tacks. Baseball is entertainment. That's what it is. And if you're a billionaire owning it and you have a chance to get some of the best players, but Milwaukee is creating an aura of tension, and instead of delivering that World Series title, yes, and there's a lot, yes, the Padres could blow up in their face. If they win one World Series in this turn, then what happens 5, 6, 7 years down the line doesn't freaking matter. If you don't believe me, go to Philadelphia and ask them what they think about that 2018 with Howard and Utley and Jimmy Rollins and Cole Hamels and Victorino. That's the team they've been waiting their whole lives to see. And it cost them a little bit in the end, but then they just pop in the 2008 DVD and relax.
Yeah, relax, and then you get to be more interested in prospects without it feeling like you're just using that as an excuse.
Right.
Afterwards, then it's like, "Hey guys, our bad, but like we really literally have no talent. Cliff Lee's like 48 years old and can't pitch anymore. We need to like try and reset our farm system." Then it makes more sense. But these teams, like you said, super long droughts. San Francisco Giants, St. Louis Cardinals, at least those teams have shown that they've had success and have a couple titles to their name. But some of these Brewers, the last time they made the World Series, I'm pretty sure that 2001: A Space Odyssey hadn't come out yet. You know, like last time they were there, I'm pretty sure Terminator 2 hadn't come out yet.
In the last time the Brewers were in the World Series, we did not confirm who Luke Skywalker's father was.
That's crazy. That's the one. There you go. That's
it was
good.
Still up in the air. It was
That's
still
good.
You got to hear both sides. When the last time the Brewers were in the World Series, I could say the sentence, "Hey, did you see this new film? It's called E.T."
Nah.
Haven't seen it yet.
My gosh.
It's new.
That's think about that, guys. Think about that.
Yeah.
And this is the team that's convincing you that can't do
it. Charles and Diana were newlyweds.
Wow. Okay?
All right.
Historian Sullivan, man. He's killing it.
Thriller hadn't come out yet.
Oh, that's a good one.
Michael's new album is interesting. I haven't heard it yet.
That's good. That was really good.
Let's go through it.
That was really good.
MASH was still on.
MASH
was
good old
still
MASH.
On.
Good old MASH.
Cheers was new. Cheers was in its first season.
No, not even Frasier yet. Yeah.
And
crazy stuff.
You know what you couldn't buy then? You couldn't buy a single Built Bar. And guess what? Built Bars are the best tasting protein bars out there. And look we're all trying to be in better shape. We're trying to be healthier. But Built Bars are so delicious, you won't believe they're good for you. But they're fantastic. And one of the reasons why, Javi Reyes, is they're covered in 100% pure chocolate. Okay? 100% pure chocolate. And they've got great flavors. Churro, peanut butter brownie. My favorite's the raspberry. I know Stacey Gatsuz loves the mint chocolate. What's your favorite?
I like Cherry Barcia, personally.
Oh, that's good.
And I also really loved Apple Almond Crisp when they had it. I have been begging the homies at Built Bar, anything, bring them back. And what's fun also is that they bring back flavors a lot. Like all sorts of new ones every other month and whatnot. So it's kind of like Ben and Jerry's where there's always a new flavor popping out. Built Bar's kind of got that vibe to them.
Hey, but we're a baseball podcast, so we love to talk stats. Tell us some of the stats we have on the Built Bar.
Oh, I got you. You already mentioned the 100% real chocolate, which is 100% awesome and real and cool. Also, there are protein bars, so they're healthy for you. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar and a whopping 17 for Phillip Rivers. 17 grams of protein. That's right. Oh, yeah. And you can also pick them up at Walmart now. You can pick them up at Sam's Club.
I don't have to wait for them to come in the mail?
You could just walk on over or drive on over to the store.
I'm so in. No, where now? No, it's probably an obscure place you can buy them, or not any place I'd ever heard of, right?
No, it's Walmart, man.
Walmart's
got you covered. You've heard of Walmart. Come on.
Yeah, well, but you know what? Yeah, there's a Walmart, but you know what? It'd be better for me if it was at Sam's Club because that's closer to my home. But it's too bad that I can't get them at Sam's Club. So.
That's funny. It's funny you bring up Sam's Club because you can get them there too.
I won't believe it. This is the.
Yeah.
You know what? You're at school now. You have to stay after school for lying to the teacher.
They got 13 bar boxes. That's right.
That's what I have every day.
Sam's Club is packing. They're coming. They got heat. You know, they're ready to go with the Built Bars, man.
All right. So where can people get their Built Bars?
Remember, you could still order them online, and also Walmart or Sam's Club. All sorts of different flavors. Already mentioned the back rows. We've been talking about them on this show, on Locked On MLB, Locked On crossovers everywhere forever, and for good reason. We all love them very much, and we fairly routinely bring them up in our Locked On chat. That's how good they are. So go check them out.
They're so good that we all love their jingle. Built Bars, they're still good. Okay, last segment here because I got a class to teach in a few minutes. Javi, I brought this up with H-Town of Locked On Astros. I'm going to make you mad at me.
Oh, let's do it.
This is not my official. It's not official yet, but I'm leaning towards a Padres pennant this year.
Ooh.
I picked them to win the World Series a few years ago, and they missed the playoffs altogether. So, Padres fans, hang on.
I remember that too, yeah.
I picked Joe Musgrove to throw that no-hitter. I didn't pick him to drop a kettlebell on his freaking foot.
Yeah.
Tell me, what are your thoughts on, obviously, I've cursed the team. They'll probably miss the playoffs altogether now. I do think it will be an Astros Padres World Series. So therefore, go to FanDuel and put all your money on the Rays playing the Brewers.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think about rooting for a team that has sky high expectations?
I mean, in fairness, the National League is a lot more open. Just because, you never know about St. Louis if they sneak in there. I know they added Contreras this offseason.
And the Braves are good. Braves are good. Really good,
Braves
too.
are just great. Mets are just great. Phillies are just great, although maybe not necessarily the same regular season great. But once they make the playoffs, it's not going to matter. They have the star power at top. So those are a bunch of dangerous teams. And you still have the Dodgers, even if they had a little bit of a light offseason by their standards. Well, I agree. I just think the American League, we keep seeing every year that no one's beating Houston. It's just not happening. The Yankees went in there and got spanked, and they had the best season that they'd had in a long time. No one can hit the Astros right now. Maybe you get a little sneaky Blue Jays in there, but the Astros.
The only way someone's going to beat the Astros is if a team like Cleveland, who has very good pitching, just shuts them down in the division series. No one's going to beat them in a best of 7 series, but in a division series, you could see a team they're like, oh, they got hot. Kind of like, I don't know, the Padres last year with Los Angeles.
Yeah, they beat 2 100-win teams. We beat one of the teams so bad that their fan base started a pretty apocryphal, kind of thing about Joe Musgrove cheating. That's how badly they beat the Mets down.
It's because Musgrove played for the Astros. It just sort of
I know.
So it rubs off on him.
I like the idea that Joe Musgrove would criticize the Astros and then 2 days later cheat on a nationally televised game against the biggest team in the sport, almost next to the Yankees, right? So that is adorable. I really find it pretty great. But yeah, I mean, the problem is that the Braves and the Dodgers and all those teams and the Phillies and Mets really do scare me. Just based on law of averages, the Mets did not back down. I'm not buying into the whole, well, they didn't get better. They just retooled.
No, I think they got better. I think absolutely.
And then you could also argue they did get better. And if you don't want to argue that they got better and that they just remained the same, wow, what an awful thing to remain a 100-win team. So we just talked about all these other teams that go backwards. In baseball, it is a big deal to remain at kind of your level of excellence. So those teams do scare me. And the problem is that big time thing. I know that this is the same thing we said with the Mets last year, but with the DeGrom and Scherzer coming out, but now it's Scherzer and Justin Verlander. It's a little scary, and Kodai Senga. So there's just not as many flaws in the Mets. The upside of the Padres lineup is, I think, higher, but the Mets, it's still just really scary. And then Atlanta, just Michael Harris is good now.
Yeah.
Spencer Strider. They just pull these guys out, they develop them, and they pay them immediately. That's the Brave strategy.
The Brave strategy. They get them. They don't worry about arbitration. They just buy out their arbitration years. And I think they've created a culture where it's like, is this probably less than what you could make in an ideal scenario, like your, like your Ozzy Albies, what's his face, Matt Olson, guys like that. But they're also like, hey, how about we just never go through arbitration, though? And players are like, great, sounds awesome. I really hate arbitration. That's what I think the Braves have shown. But in the end, man, I mean, it's kind of just, I really think it's kind of a toss-up right now. Just like who gets hot at the right moment. It would be really hilarious if this is the year that the Dodgers finally don't explode in the playoffs. It honestly would make sense poetically. So just from that perspective, but man. Well, I had Jeff Snyder of Locked On Dodgers on, and I said I said that you have to find your 2006 Cardinals, because the 2006 Cardinals were by far the worst of any of the playoff teams that Tony La Russa put on. So naturally, they won the World Series. So I said that you have all these 100-win teams that fell short. So you got to have that 84-win team that goes on and wins it all. And sorry, that team eliminated the Padres. What are you going to do? But hey, look class is starting. Okay, the new class is starting up, and Javi Reyes is taking us to school. Javi, where can people listen to your wonderful show?
You can find it Locked On Padres on YouTube, wherever your podcasts you get them from. Just type in Locked On Padres. Type in even Padres; it'll probably come up at some point. You can find me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. If you don't like my comic book and silly tweets, though, always only exclusively Padres stuff at LO_Padres.
And what about that's your, obviously that and Locked On MLB show your first listen. But what about Locked On Fantasy Baseball? You know anything about that?
Oh man, you got to check that out, man. Everyone, look, I'm getting the fantasy fever already. I'm looking at projections just to see, oh yeah, who's number 1 overall. It's Ohtani, but you get my point. It's a lot of fun, so go check out those guys. They're putting out really great content and giving you tips to win your league. Locked On Fantasy Baseball is back here at Locked On, so go check that out.
And you can check us out, Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Almost perfectly filling in my free period and giving us a day of Padres talk. This has been Locked On MLB, Locked On Padres crossover. He's Javi Reyes. My name is Paul Francis Sullivan. Please, if you're not my student, call me Sully.